My name is Dr. Alina Mercer. I am 33 years old, and for 5 years I lived as if my family no longer existed. Not because they were gone, but because they chose to believe a version of me that never existed in the first place. It started with one lie from my younger brother Daniel. A lie that I had dropped out of medical school, but it didn't stay small. It grew into something much darker, something detailed and convincing enough that my parents never once thought to question it. 5 years ago, I was sitting at our kitchen table in Richmond, Virginia, holding an acceptance letter to a surgical program that I had worked toward my entire life. My father looked at me in a way he never had before, not distracted, not dismissive, but proud. He said something simple, something that stayed with me longer than it should have. He said maybe all that work finally meant something. It was not perfect, but it was enough. It was the first time I felt seen in a family where I had always been the quiet one, the one who stayed out of the way, while Daniel filled every room with ease and confidence. My parents understood him in a way they never understood me, and I accepted that for years. But that moment shifted something, and Daniel noticed. At first he acted supportive, asking questions, showing interest, calling more often. I thought we were finally building something real. I did not realize I was giving him everything he needed to dismantle me. 3 years later, my closest friend Maya was diagnosed with an aggressive cancer. She had no one, no family, no support system, so I stepped in. I requested a formal leave of absence from medical school. It was approved, documented, completely legitimate. I planned to return after 1 semester. I told Daniel, maybe out of habit, maybe out of hope. And 3 days later, my father called me with a voice I barely recognized. Cold and final. He said, "We know everything." And then he listed things that were not true, that I had dropped out, that I was hiding things, that I had chosen a different life, and cut them off. I tried to explain. I told him about the leave, about Maya, about the paperwork, but he cut me off and said Daniel showed us proof. That word ended the conversation before it could begin. My mother came on the line and asked how I could lie to them, and in that moment, I understood that they were not asking questions. They had already decided who I was. The call ended in minutes, and in the days that followed, I tried everything. I called, I emailed, I sent official documents, I gave them every possible way to verify the truth, but nothing reached them. By the end of that week, both of them had blocked me, and I stopped trying, not because I didn't care, but because I realized I could not force people to see me if they had already chosen not to. Maya passed away that winter, and I was the only one there. After the funeral, I went back to medical school and finished what I started. Not for my family, not to prove anything, but because it was the only way forward. I built a life from that point on without them. Residency, long nights, no safety net, no one to call when things got hard. Just discipline and momentum. Years passed. I became a surgeon. I got married. I created something stable and real. Something that didn't depend on people who had erased me. And then one night, everything collided. It was just after 2 a.m. when my pager went off. Level 1 trauma, severe internal injuries, unstable patient. I walked into the trauma bay focused and ready. I picked up the chart and saw the name Daniel Mercer. And for a few seconds, everything inside me went completely still. 5 years of silence condensed into a single moment. And then I set it aside, because none of that mattered on the table in front of me. He was a patient, and I was the surgeon who could save him. So I stepped forward and told the team to prepare for surgery. The surgery lasted just over 3 hours and required complete focus. There were multiple internal injuries, significant blood loss, and several moments where the outcome could have gone either way. But my hands did not hesitate, because in that room, he was not my brother. He was a life that needed saving, and I knew exactly what to do. When it was over, his condition stabilized, and he was transferred to intensive care. I scrubbed out and stood in silence for a moment, before walking to the waiting room where my parents were sitting, older and worn in a way I had never seen before. My mother stood as soon as she saw me. My father followed. He addressed me as doctor and asked about his son, and I told him calmly that Daniel was stable and would recover. Then he noticed my name badge, and everything shifted. Recognition moved across his face slowly, and my mother followed a second later. She said my name, like she was not sure she was allowed to, but I did not step forward. I stayed where I was and continued speaking as I would to any other family, professional and distant, because too much time had passed for anything else. My mother began to cry, and my father said nothing. Later that day, Daniel woke up, and I went to see him alone. He looked at me like he was trying to understand how I could be standing there in front of him. I told him his surgery was successful and that he would recover. He tried to speak, but I did not let him turn it into something else. Not yet. What followed was not a dramatic confrontation, but a slow unraveling of the truth. My parents began asking questions, real ones this time, and the story they had believed for 5 years started to fall apart piece by piece. Eventually, Daniel admitted what he had done, not with emotion or clarity, just enough to confirm what had always been true. And for the first time, no one defended him. The silence that followed was heavier than anything that had come before. My parents tried to come back into my life after that, not all at once, but carefully. Uncertain. Apologies came first, then attempts to explain, then requests to rebuild. I did not accept everything, but I did not close the door completely either, because forgiveness is not a single moment. It is a process built over time, with boundaries. We started small, short visits, simple conversations, no pretending the past had not happened, just the truth sitting with us. Months later, they came to my house for the first time. My father asked where the plates were, like a guest unsure of his place. My mother stood quietly in the kitchen. Everything felt unfamiliar, but real, and real was enough. Daniel and I are still figuring things out. There is no perfect ending to something like this. Some damage does not disappear. It changes shape and becomes something you carry differently. He has a scar from the surgery, and I have the memory of those 5 years. But I learned something through all of it. You do not need revenge to move forward. You do not need validation from people who refuse to see you. And you do not need the past to be fixed in order to build something meaningful. If people find their way back, that is their choice. But whether they stay is yours. And that is where your power truly begins.